As Vera and Melody approached the small house, they quickly saw the door swing open as young Talion rushed out. "So what did she say, Mom?" he said as he rushed out before coming to a stop, beginning to stare at this new figure standing in front of him. Talion wasn't expecting anyone else. In fact, his entire life, other than the animals in the forest, he had never seen anyone else. It had simply been him and his mother his entire life. He had never so much as spoken to another person. And so, in the moment, he was completely dumbfounded, at a loss for words. He in fact found himself very nervous, unsure of who this person was or what to even say to them. "So, I suppose this is him. Young Talion, is it?" Vera said as she slowly began to approach. "I know that you don't know me, but I am Melody's mother. So, in a certain respect, I suppose you could say that I'm your grandmother," she said, walking very close and beginning to kneel down in front of Talion. "Now, let's have a look at you," she said, beginning to look him over, gently running her hands through his long silver hair. "Well, I didn't expect the hair color. It is quite unique. Your mother told me about your eyes as well, just as she described them. They are, in fact, quite captivating. You look like a sturdy young boy," she said as she pawed over him, lifting his arms, beginning to examine his features one by one. "I had wondered what you were going to look like. You look mostly human, to be honest, aside from the eyes. And of course," she said, as she began to look back at Talion's long silvery tail, swaying ever so gently back and forth. As Talion had grown, so too did his tail grow with him, now the full length of his body, covered in smooth, small scales that also had a silver sheen to them and glistened in the sunlight somewhat. Yes, just as she described, a tail as well. I'm not really sure what to say," Talion replied. My name is Talion?" "Yes, I'm aware. I'm getting the feeling that you're a bit nervous," Vera said as she stopped inspecting him for a short time. "I mean, your mother did teach you basic etiquette, did she not?" Yes, ma'am, Grandma, I'm really not sure what to do right now," Talion said, as his stance and posture was very rigid. Having never seen another person, quite frankly, he had no practice in social activities with anyone but his mother. And even when he attempted to grasp at something to say, it seemed as if it floated away in his head, leaving him silent. "Well, there's no need to be nervous. I assure you you're not going to come to any harm. I'm just giving you a look over, making sure you're healthy, and trying to assess a few things. You see, Melody asked me for some help, so I'm going to do my best to oblige. But in order to do that, I need to give you a once-over. I might also need to ask you a few questions, but I assure you, you'll be fine. And there's no need to be nervous. After all, we're family, aren't we?" she said, with a slight grin in Talion's direction. Yes, I guess," Talion replied softly. "There's no need to be scared of me, and if you're wondering what to call me, you can just call me Grandmother. This will be suitable. Now, Talion, I'm going to need you to open wide and say ah." Just open your mouth. I need to see your teeth, of course. Don't want any of them falling out now, do we? She said, with a gentle smile. Yes, Grandma, Talion replied, as he did as she asked, opening wide and showing his teeth. Yes, they look rather healthy. Nothing wrong with them. They look exceptionally sharp. Okay, that should be good now. Go ahead and close it, Vera said. Well, by all appearances, you appear to be a very healthy young man. So, Talion, your mother informs me that you have very special gifts. I should like to hear you tell me of those gifts, but we can do so inside. After all, I am getting up in years. I need to have a comfy seat, and perhaps while I'm at it, I shall cook something to eat. I'm sure that you could do with a stomach full of food, couldn't you, young man? Yes, Grandmother, Talion responded, still somewhat wary, but beginning to feel slightly more at ease, now that she was no longer examining him. So, Talion, Melody, and Vera went into the house, and just as she said, Vera looked through the kitchen and began making them something to eat from what was available. She actually seemed somewhat surprised at how well stocked they were for food. She did in fact ask about it, and found out that it was mostly because of Talion. He had an extraordinary amount of energy, and was very adept at traveling through the woods and hunting. His mother taught him to recognize edible foods and vegetables, and so he would often gather them when he saw them. This was something that he did sheerly for the entertainment sake of it, to have something to do. So they had a very well-stocked pantry with an incredible variety of things, which Vera used to cook a very delightful smelling meal. As they talked things over, beginning to get in-depth in discussing Talion's abilities, being very specific and as in-depth as they could. Finally, the meal was done, and Vera poured everyone a bowl of a very fine stew, sitting down at the table beside Talion. So, while we're enjoying this meal, I might as well fill you in on what it is that I do know and what I don't. Based on your description of Talion's abilities, my first guess would probably be that he was some kind of dragon. I mean, are you sure, Mother? As far as storybooks are concerned, dragons are very large, terrifying creatures. Talion couldn't possibly be one of those, Melody said, putting down her stew for the time being. Not everything is as it is in fairy tales and lore. Melody, this is something that you need to know, in case you come in contact with any other supernatural entities, or hear about them. This was not about magic primarily, so it is not information that I've felt necessary to inform you of when you were a child. Some of these things can be quite terrifying, you know. Regardless, there are many types of supernatural entities and otherworldly beings. Dragons are amongst the most well-known and prolific for a reason. They are exceptionally versatile. They can adapt and survive to almost any circumstance or condition. They possess innumerable powers that can differ drastically from one breed to the next. Dragons are so well endowed when it comes to survival and adaptation that you could scarcely go to any realm other than Earth and not find one. There are supposedly even dragons in heaven and hell, dragons in the Fey realm and the bestial realm. No matter what different otherly world you go to, It is said that there are always dragons there, and it is because they are, well, they're alpha predators. They are at the top of the food chain in every sense of the word, and have many talents and abilities, of which I do believe the capacity for magic is among them. However, the information that I have on this is scattered at best, and not very specific. I have heard tales of dragons using magic. However, I have also heard stories that say that the magic of dragons is somewhat different than that of a human being. But once again, there are no details on what those differences are. But first and foremost, if we are to truly find out whether Talion has the capacity to use magic, we first need to truly know what it is that he is. We need to know his race. But worry not. I am aware that you personally may not know what it is, but I just so happen to have a spell, one that I collected from a hunter, one who stalks the darker parts of the world in search of supernatural monsters that bring harm to humanity, and doing away with them. This individual actually had access to a magical spell, something that he used to help him in his work. Specifically, this spell allows one to take a sample of blood, and by gaining a sample of blood, you can get detailed information on what that blood came from, such as what type of supernatural being it is, in great detail. This should be our first step, and should give us a fair idea of where to start looking in terms of information.